Hey guys, Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com, back for another session of High Power University, and we are continuing on now into the real nitty-gritty, you might say, of what happened between the 1927 Grand Rendement and the P35 High Power, and continuing on with some additional observations. Barrel length, I've never found. I don't believe what was the barrel length for the 1927 Grand Rendement. I'm going to speculate this was a 5-inch barrel handgun. I think it's a definite, just from looking at the design and looking at the prototypes, this was longer than the 4 and I believe it's 21/32 inch high power barrel as we know it today. And if that is true, and I'm mainly going off of what looks like the length of this part of the slide of the 1927 Grand Rendement, I think he got another 3/8 of an inch in there, and which would make the high powers barrel a 5-inch barrel. It would stand to reason, several reasons that would have worked out if it was a 5-inch barrel or around that. The French wanted a handgun that would be able to reach out and touch someone reliably at about 55 yards. What we see here is tangent sights, which would allow you to adjust for elevation. The longer barrel is going to definitely lean into the velocity component of whatever caliber that this handgun would have been chambered for. So it appears that Mr. Browning would have been on the right track as far as the accuracy at distance component and getting all that you can get out of a particular cartridge in a handgun. One of the other observations about this is with that longer barrel, it would have provided more room for a more substantial recoil spring he called the reaction spring. It would have been able to have been longer, and it would have been able to have just been more spring. And that would have been a good thing with the 1927 Grand Rendement, because there's not an awful lot of resistance that's going to be offered by this bolt. Some, because the slide recoiling reoriented the parts in the breech bolt assembly. So there would have been some resistance there. There would have been some resistance on cocking the spring, the main spring, which was the driver of the firing pin into the primer. But I cannot imagine that being like a 32-pound mainspring on the high powers traditional hammer strut. There's just not anything here that tells me that you would get the resistance component in what John Browning designed there that you get when you cock the slide must come rearward and cock this hammer of the high power. So this hammer is resistance, and part of your resistance component when that slide starts rearward, it has to cock that hammer. So that's part of your recoil control on the high power. It's part of why Dieudonné Save was able to get away with shortening the barrel of John Browning's original design and not needing to come up with an especially different recoil spring or recoil control arrangement, and partly because he displaced part of the slide's recoil equation into the hammer and onto the hammer strut and the mainspring. So shortening the barrel and having less recoil spring, that was kind of a trade-off in that respect. Another thing that we would key in on here is John Browning mentions in this design patent that this item number 5 is a pin, and he doesn't really describe what kind of a pin that it is. Obviously it's a round pin, and it goes through the frame, and it in essence was this barrel cam or frame cam, and that is when your slide starts rearward, that barrel cam mates with the barrel cam lug on the barrel, and that's what causes your barrel to tilt when the slide starts rearward, and the barrel locks into that. Dieudonné Save redesigned it. He designed two sides flat, one side angled, and the back of that pin, I'm talking about inside the frame, has a radius on the back of it, different than a round pin. It gets there by starting its life as a pin, in fact, but it's a big pin, not like a roll pin. And you can probably see the outline of it here. And what FN decided to do was to basically make a part, mash it into the frame, and then polish it down until it's even and kind of blend it in with the frame. And because it's mashed in, it's considered permanent. And because also it's mashed in, you can kind of get a finish across there that disguises it as if there's almost not even a pin there. The slide stop on the opposite side hides it. But on most high powers, you can actually see the outline of it, and you see that it is, in fact, not round. Dieudonné Save basically traded round for the more blocky design here. And it worked for the most part. It is part of what we believe attributes to this fracture business that we have going on up higher on the barrel, possibly. But where this design that FN went with for that pin, where that became problematic was after really Dieudonné Save's time at FN and near the beginning of Leon Hubert's time at FN. FN, at least for a while, had an interest in making these lightweight high powers, or aluminum frame high powers. The first aluminum frame high powers that were made did use a pin, the same kind of a pin as in the steel frame, this kind of an oval, and then you have the interior, the sides that are flat and angled and so forth. And that didn't work out. It didn't work out for the frames specifically. So as a result, in order to make the aluminum frame pistols work and be, how do I say this, where this mashed in pin would not spread the aluminum frame is the specific problem that they were having. You're going to notice on not the first generation of aluminum frame high powers out of FN, but the later ones, look what shows up. A round pin that has a barrel cam lug that is in fact rounded. And folks, what FN did when the design that Dieudonné Save came up with for this pin and the barrel cam lug, when it didn't work out in the aluminum frame high powers, they went right back to the 1927 Grand Rendement. I mean, this is exactly where it came from. This barrel cam lug design, that's exactly John Browning's barrel cam lug design. And guess what? It worked. The aluminum frames with this design, I've never seen one that has a integrity problem with the frame. It's a round pin. It's pounded in. It's designed to be permanent and not be pounded back out. I think it actually probably could be, but we're not going to even be trying that these days. But this is an interesting thing because what that really confirmed to me was, you know, the P35 was the version of the 1927 Grand Rendement that became famous. But when the P35 had design elements that proved to be weak, especially when you start having an aluminum frame in the picture, it just is unmistakable. They went right back to the 1927 Grand Rendement and looked at how did John Browning do this. And then that's what they did. Interesting is this would have been around the time early in Leon Hubert's career. And Leon Hubert was, in essence, he came on the scene just around the time that Dieudonné Save was getting ill and just about at retirement age at FN. Leon Hubert was the guy, one of the guys on the design team there that came into the picture at around that time. We're going to continue on that thought in our next session. This is Mark Allen, BH Spring Solutions LLC and bhspringsolutions.com.